Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Let's imagine the situation. You're rushing to work and find a car parked in front of your garage. In our first story, we'll tell you what our OP did, but I think you've already guessed it yourself. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Maybe don't park in front of someone's garage. Several years ago, I lived in an apartment complex where I was able to pay a little extra to have my own garage right across from my apartment. I worked the late shift at a retail store, so if I hadn't paid for the garage, chances are I would have had to park across the entire property, 250 plus units every night, so it was worth it. One morning, I was about to leave for work, but I noticed a car parked in front of my garage. Obviously, I thought this was ridiculous and assumed that maybe someone just ran in real quick to grab something from their apartment and would leave any second. Well, 30 minutes roll by, so I decide to call the office and report the problem. They say to give it another 30 minutes and they'll call a tow truck. I've already called work to let them know I'll be late. The car gets towed, I pull out of the garage, and right as my garage door shuts, I see a very confused young woman looking around. She'd just missed the sight of me pulling out of my garage. I think this is hilarious, and I roll down my window to see if she'll say anything. The short conversation went something like this. Lady, have you seen a red car? Me, no, where was it parked? Lady, right here. You mean right in front of that garage? Lady, clearly not understanding that I'd implied she'd done something wrong. Yes. Well, if I had to guess, it probably got towed. Why would someone have it towed? Maybe, and this is just a guess, you shouldn't park in front of someone's garage. Anyway, have a good day. I honestly don't think any of it really sank in, but hopefully she learned a valuable lesson in common sense. And depending on where you are, a very expensive lesson. And our second story. Exfriend thinks I'm going to be their landlord. I bought my first flat when I was in my 20s. I rented out a room to a guy from Poland. Awesome flatmate, super good at DIY and maintenance. I was seeing someone for a while, let's call her Ghost. Ghost lived with two other girls, one of whom is the titular ex-friend. Let's call her Karen. Ghost and I broke up, and that whole friend group ditched me. My career went pretty well, and I bought a house in the suburbs. I decided to let FM stay on in the flat on the same rent, with the proviso that he not sublet, but his girlfriend moves in, which is fine. I get the mortgage covered and a tenant who's better at maintaining the place than I am. He gets a 2-bed flat for half price. Few years on, and a certain referendum passes, and flatmate and his girlfriend are moving home to Poland. His girlfriend's already gone back, but when I'm over sorting some stuff with FM, I see a huge pile of moving boxes, etc. in the spare room. Oh, is that your girlfriend's stuff? Are you going to be able to fit it all in the car? No, that's Karen's stuff. She asked if she could leave it here while we were still here. As it turns out, Karen was still friends with GF. She found out they were leaving and that their rent was a pretty good deal. She told GF that she had squared it all with me and that she was going to take it all over. I'll confess to the few minutes panic and confusion, I've not spoken to this person in years. She thinks that she's going to move into my flat and doesn't even ask? How the hell does she even intend to pay rent, given she's made 0 attempts to contact me? And why would I not go for market rate? I'm honestly baffled and somewhat morbidly fascinated to find out how she thinks this is going to work. I don't really want to get into some kind of ridiculous squatters' rights squabble with them, so I contact my solicitor, think a non-trial lawyer. She recommends I get the locks changed and install a security camera, and to send the inevitable roof fitting her way when Karen turns up and tries to get in. I actually think she's quite excited by the drama, a bit more interesting than property conveyancing. I explain all this to FM. He agrees to move out 2 weeks early and even helps me fit the doorbell camera. He really was the best. So that's where we are. I pretty much have the Ring app open constantly on my phone. I have pretty clear instructions not to say anything other than give my solicitor's information and record any and all correspondence when it happens. I'm presuming she'll hear from girlfriend, though. And our last story. When someone tries to get you fired, but you have a reverse card. At the time, I was working as a manager in a mid-sized business. While I was there, I was assigned a new member to my team. I'll call her Evil. Evil was in her mid-20s and was pretty fresh out of college. She was the kind of person who could talk your ear off about all of her ideas and plans and what she was working on, but never really seemed to have anything to show for it. When I talked to her about clients complaining that she wasn't getting back to them, she would always have an excuse about how difficult they were, how snowed under she was, and how she had written an email but must have gotten lost in spam, so on and so forth. Basically never her fault. It got to the point where after one of our monthly meetings, I called her in and explained that if she couldn't get her tasks done, she needed to let us know so we could help delegate resources to make sure things weren't slipping through the cracks. I'll admit I was pretty direct. Her performance was impacting the whole team, and my job was literally to keep the team on track. I get that people can be under pressure, and there can be stuff going on at home which impacts work, and that sometimes people need a bit of help. But if every time I ask about a project you say, yep, everything's good, I've got it under control, then it all falls apart, and your only response is to blame the client, we have a problem. I explained that I wasn't going to start formal performance management or anything like that, but from now on, I'd like her to check with me on Monday mornings for 10 minutes to go over objectives for the week and to check if she needed support with any of her clients. I know it isn't fun to be micromanaged, so I try to keep these check-ins short and mostly just offer assistance on stuff. She clearly hated my guts, though, and apparently was hatching her own pro-revenge. Now, part of my role included use of a purchasing card, which wasn't in my name, but I had access to. I was given the card to basically make small purchases for the office or spend up to $500 on clients. The card was kept in an office I shared with another team manager where we both could access it when we needed it. One day, I get a call from accounts asking about a few abnormal purchases on the card, a Photoshop subscription, a couple of Uber Eats orders, an HBO subscription, etc. I say I don't know anything about them and they should check with the other team manager. Apparently, the other team manager didn't know anything about them either because after the weekend, I get called into the big boss's office. After my colleague and I had denied involvement, accounts had started calling Adobe and Uber stuff to find out where the transactions were coming from. They said that not only were the accounts in my name, they were registered to an email address with my name in it too, e.g. ops.name@domain.com or something. I can't describe what it felt like to be in that meeting. I felt physically sick. I couldn't work out what was happening. I was so shocked I didn't know what to say. I felt like I was about to get fired, and I couldn't understand how that was even possible. The director was going on about how access to the card was a privilege and that I had signed an agreement about appropriate use and so on and so forth. I denied that I'd been using it inappropriately, and the boss listened, but I could tell that he wasn't that convinced. To be honest, in my head, I was gaslighting myself and worrying that I somehow saved the card in Google and maybe my wife had accidentally used it or something. It was terrible, and I found myself apologizing and saying, I don't know how this happened. I assure you that I know that none of these expenses are appropriate use of company funds. There must have been some kind of mistake. Can I please have the details and look into it? Etc., etc. When I finally got out of that office, job still intact, barely, Evil was waiting for me at my office door. She was grinning from ear to ear and sweetly explained she'd been waiting for our morning meeting. I told her something had come up and we'd do the meeting tomorrow. And she said, "Oh, will you be in tomorrow?" Confused, I just replied, "Yes, why would I not be in tomorrow?" And she just sipped her tea and said, "Oh, for no reason," turned around and went back to her desk. Something felt off, but I was still worrying about what had happened with the boss, so I spent the next couple of hours calling my wife, calling Adobe, and doing the same legwork that accounts had done. It became very obvious that someone had been using my name and the company card to spend a bunch of money online. Had I been hacked or something? Personal info on the dark web, and these hackers just really wanted Photoshop and Wendy's delivered? It was the Uber Eats that was her undoing. After getting on the phone and talking through what had gone on, and obviously giving my name for the account and everything, the fellow on the phone told me where the food had been delivered. It was in our city, which made me rule out straight away any notion of my data being sold online or something. Now I was suspicious and pissed. I don't like to think the worst of people, but now I was. Listening to my gut, I pulled up Evil's employee information and checked her address. I pulled it up on Google Maps, dropped a pin on her place, and then looked for the address Uber Eats had given me. It was the corner of her effing block. I was furious. When she left work for the day, I got IT to give me access to her laptop. Sure enough, when I opened up her domain.com account, under her listed accounts was ops.name@domain.com. There were some things she'd been smart about. The IP address she'd been using was the office, which would have tied back to me. She'd even had the food delivered to a different address. She'd even made a fake email address, but saving her passwords on a work computer was a mistake. I called the boss that night and explained what I'd found and kept the IT guy with me to support the fact that I hadn't just logged into her computer and made it all up. The next day, the boss called her into the office and fired her so bad there were red trucks lining up outside the building. When she, teary-eyed, left his office, I made sure I was standing in the hall sipping a cup of tea. It had gotten cold while I waited for her, but still tasted sweet. I hope she went home that night, because if she did, she would have received some nice goodbye Wendy's delivered by Uber Eats, paid for on my personal card, of course. Revenge and justice can be the same thing, right? In the end, she was fired, the boss apologized, and we were on good terms when I left in October for a new gig. She never apologized, and I haven't seen her since. The boss decided not to get police involved, and neither did I. Just didn't want the hassle. Let's hope that toxic waste of skin learned her lesson and didn't repeat that somewhere else. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.